What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast.
Test. One.
That couldn't have gone any better.
For those of you watching at home, I should have started this at 1:15. I said that I'd eaten too much and I wanted to digest until 1:30. We sat down at 1:35, started monkeying around, had some audio difficulties. And I knew these guys were going to try and test, but then they hadn't said anything for 10 minutes. And just when I started that intro, that's what happened. Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast, joined as always by Phil Perry. We are at Gillette Stadium. Hiya, Top.
Test. 1, 2. Test. Seems good.
Perfect. So let's roll. Patriots in sweltering conditions today. They got after it on the practice fields at Gillette Stadium. We're going to detail what the Patriots have been up to, why it seems they haven't been going quite as hard as they usually do at the start of camp, the interesting tightrope that Bill Belichick has to walk with his team's mood and attitude, and we're going to keep it light at the end with Jake Bailey, Patriots punter, and irrelevant questions. Oh, Stacy fixed it. Stacy James, Patriots Vice President of Media Relations. I asked him, I said, is there any way you can change that and turn it off in the blue level? He said he would try. It appears to have happened. No further ado, I thought you people would want to see and hear how the sausage got made. We bring in Phil Perry. Phil, how's it going, guy?
It's going great. Feeling good. Day 8 of camp in the books. We're over a full week now. You
had an observation earlier that over the first 2-3 days of practices, when the team was not in pads, the offense would score or have a positive play, and there was no end to the cartwheels. They had a blast, spikes, swag, the Vince McMahon walk all around the sidelines after a play. We haven't seen a lot of that lately because the offense has stagnated significantly since the pads have gone on and they've input some things. Bill Belichick, I'm guessing, has to monitor the attitude of his team. How do you see that as being a subplot to what we're seeing in this training camp so far?
It's changed so much since that first day. You had receivers going over to the crowd, firing them up, parties after every successful play, and there were a lot of successful plays. We haven't seen anything close to that since then.
What's it look like now?
Well, today is third day of pads, and it's hard to get any kind of overt reaction, positive at least, from the offense. Today, the offense, once again, at the end of practice in 11-on-11s, I thought was very up and down. I had Mac Jones at 7 for 10 on his attempts, but I think that number's probably a little misleading. You had a screen in there, you had a check down or two mixed in there, but you had a lot of plays, Tom, that were really almost broken plays. You had a sack by Christian Barmore, you had a couple of different throwaways, you had some miscommunication on different routes. It still doesn't look good. The run plays, by the way, they ran 4. 3 of them were, I would say, no gain or for losses maybe. So it still is very much kind of what we've seen in terms of the herky-jerky nature of the whole thing. There's no rhythm right now.
Herky-jerky nature, plays that are basically aborted or checkdowns taken just to get something going forward down the field, as Phil observed earlier today. One thing as we watch this unfold that's interesting to note is by now we would have seen padded goal line plays. We would have seen guys tackling to the ground. We would have seen, probably a fairly consistent process over to the hill after practice and guys running. We're not seeing that. That could be because they're trying to manage the physical nature of this preseason. And I'm not saying the Patriots are the beneficiaries of a kinder, gentler Bill Belichick who's not going to make them run, not by any stretch. He ran the shit out of them in minicamp. However, Phil, you wonder if these guys are not going to get beaten down as much by Bill because they might have a low energy feeling, and you don't want them to get too negative. I mean, to be point blank about it and blunt, the practices look like ass for the offense. No sense running those guys into the ground and making them feel worse about themselves at the end of it.
I just think, Tom, well, first of all, I know they care about buy-in from their players, and they care about the way in which you attack your job and what they're trying to get accomplished. And so buy-in matters. It doesn't mean it's an easy place to work, but you have to get the right people first, and you have to be able to monitor your team and give it what it needs. That's something we've talked about on this podcast before. When they're riding high, maybe you do have to knock them down a peg or two. When they're not, maybe you do talk them up a little bit more behind the scenes or at the podium. I wonder if we're seeing this play out on the field now too, where if the energy's low, why would I go run them on the hill for 20 minutes after practice and really wear them out? Why would we do goal line period, full contact the way that they usually do? Maybe it's all sports science, Tom, and maybe it's all about injury. That could very well be the case. Hey, we got to dial it back the first couple of weeks of training camp. We don't want guys getting hurt. But I wonder if there's another piece to this because of the energy that we've monitored, or the lack thereof.
And the buy-in. You raised an excellent point with the buy-in. Bill is very attuned to the psychological machinations that every player goes through, every coach goes through. I mean, these coaches are probably working 20 hours a day some days. And to see their efforts not really coming to fruition, and the greatest coach of all time having put so much pressure on them, it's got to be hard for them. When we talk about this buy-in, though, you have specifically asked Bill Belichick in the past about buy-in, albeit through a different vein, talking about trick plays and running them. But you have a story you did a couple of years ago with some awesome quotes from Bill on buy-in that even the greatest coach of all time has to guard against. Can you read a couple of the quotes that Bill offered up on that, really, and look at them in the context of not just that trick plays versus a new offense, but the psychology of coaching a team?
Yeah, the story was about Bill Belichick, the risk taker, right? So whether it was going for it on fourth down when people really weren't doing that before, trick plays, that was something I really focused on. They're coming off the double pass in the playoffs, the previous postseason. They actually, I think right before I was scheduled to talk to Bill Belichick, he does the Nate Ebner drop kick against the Eagles.
Kick.
That was a good one. And relevant to this discussion because that one didn't work, right? And so part of our conversation veered into what happens if it goes wrong. And here's his quote. And I'm not sure this even made it into the story, Tom. The story ended up being a lot about Wayne Hart. We had a very long conversation. The story, the majority of it ended up being about Wayne Harden, who's a coach that Bill Belichick really revered, still does. He passed away recently, last couple of years, but was a great risk taker for Navy. Here's the quote from Bill about if it goes sideways. I think it's all about production. It can be exciting if you feel like it's going to work. Hey, here's a new idea. We haven't done this before, and I could see how this is really going to help us. But if you start throwing a bunch of new ideas at a team, let's say the coaches, players, whatever it is, and they don't work, you get to about the fourth one, and it's like, all right, okay, here's another great new idea. Why don't we get better at the things we're doing as opposed to coming up with a different way of doing it? I think there's a fine line there. I don't think you want to just do it to do it, because if it doesn't work, then, you lose credibility. How many shitty ideas do you want to come up with? How long are they going to follow you with one bad idea after another? If you come up with something and it works, and you come up with something else and it works, then the next thing you come up with, probably nobody's even going to think twice about it. They're just going to say, okay, well, I don't really know why we're doing this. Or maybe you tell them why you're doing it, and they're like, all right, great, full speed ahead. But if you start having a few of those that backfire, and then the next thing you know, it's, what about this? And what about that? Last time we did this, we said this was going to happen, but it didn't happen. You lose confidence. I don't think that's a good idea. You got to make the right decision, find the right time. A lot of those ideas that are good ideas at the right time and this has got to be right, because if it isn't, it can look terrible. So that was one quote. There's another long one here, Tom, where, and I don't know if you want me to get into it.
Just to give you a break from lecturing. I used to be a lector, grade A lector at St. Nicholas.
Sure, great.
That's it's such great insight, and it's interesting because if that's from 2015, as you said, not doubting you, but there's very few instances where we can plumb the quotes of a coach over the course of his career. Like I went back to 2001 about him delegating. And that's why Bill Belichick is such a treasure to have as someone to cover, is we have an encyclopedia of Bill Belichick, the greatest football coach that, the NFL, in my estimation, has seen. So even though we cuff him around on this stuff, it's enlightening, because if we could get Bill with the truth serum to say, hey, you're putting some new shit in here. Is it a dice roll doing this? He could either answer it like that and go into great detail about the upside of it, or he could say, yeah, I'm just trying to get the team better every day. Unfortunately, he chooses the latter. So we have to go plummet. Phil, give us the next one.
Yeah, and I think it is just worth mentioning, like the risk that is being taken here this year is probably he would define it differently, maybe, right? But we're looking at it from the outside in and saying, well, you're changing your offense. You have two new coaches that don't have experience with this. This, to us, looks like a risk. It's not a double pass in a playoff game where you're trying to make a 14-point comeback, but it's similar.
Yeah, the dividend might not come on that drive. The dividend might come in 2024 or 2023 when you have more cap space and you've brought a couple of people in and you've upgraded your quarterbacks coach room and Joe Judge found an assistant, a head coaching job at Mississippi State or something. All of that makes it easier. So the dividend might not be realized for quite a long time, which makes it hard to sell, I would think. What are we doing out here in 101 degree heat, not making any progress?
Well, and that answer, I was sort of taken aback by his answer, because I'm like, well, wait, you're Bill Belichick. Don't you automatically get buy-in? At this point he hadn't won 6, but he had won 4, right? So so maybe he's at a little bit different point now. That's a significant jump, 4 to 6. But in my mind, I'm like, your resume is such that do you need the leeway that you're talking about to make these kinds of calls? And he says, and I said, do you get more now as opposed to earlier in your career? Do you feel the freedom to call more of these because you're Bill Belichick now as opposed to former Browns head coach? He said, you might get 1 or 2 more screw ups, but I mean, I don't think that it doesn't last too long. When I became a special teams coach with the Giants, I worked in special teams for 4 years in the NFL. And one thing that stood out to me was how poorly and what little respect the punt return teams had for fakes. They just didn't cover them. So we ran, I don't know how many we ran my first year, 79 with the Giants. Must have been 6 or 7 of them. It was a bunch of them. After a while, we started being played a little differently, but you just didn't see many of them. It was rare. Ray Perkins was the head coach. One day I went to him and said, look, I don't think they have this covered. The next week, I don't think they have that covered. Some teams didn't even have special teams coaches. They were kind of like, let's run the same shit every week. But Perkins, he was aggressive. He was like, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. That was early in my career. I probably ran more of that in 79 and 80 than I have since then. I don't know, but it might be. Might easily be, because it was a lot. I think that's an example of, it's not how long you've done it or how short you've done it. To me, it's about the right time, the right situation. Why would you do something new? Because you think it's good. So again, that's
awesome.
That's a great example of what he's talking about in game. He was a young coach, 1979. He started in 75, right, with the Lions. So, most NFL fans, Tom, across the country have no idea who Bill Belichick is, but he had a good idea. Even if it was a little off the wall, it worked. And so that gives you the leeway to do more. It's more about what have you done for me lately, maybe, than the resume, I think was his point there.
And because you think it's good, might, in that instance, obviously, is a 4th down conversion. But in this instance, because you think it's good and is good for the football team, it means that by the end of this year, Tyquan Thornton might be more relevant than N'Keal Harry was in 3 years combined. By the end of this year, you've found a way to make Devontae Parker and or Hunter Henry more similar to George Kittle, for instance. Zach Ertz, somebody who has prospered in that at the tight end position. Because you have 2 excellent running backs who can probably run the stretch, then you have that ability. Because it's going to be easier to coach. Because you think it's going to be good, you can find coaches to coach this. But you're going to take some licks down. And that's the hard thing. And then the other byproduct of that, the subplot to this season that underpins everything that we don't often talk about because it's very much a loaded topic, is Robert Kraft, octogenarian owner, pushing the chips into the middle of the table a little bit with his septuagenarian head coach and saying, we haven't won a playoff game in 3 years. If the coach is turning over the offense and has a bunch of guys who've never really coached offense before, and it looks like trash all year, does Robert say, well, okay, well, we're down the road with this new offense. I don't like how we implemented it, but it's supposed to work in the long term, so I'll let it go? Or does he say, we shouldn't have done it this way? That really is a thread that runs through 2022, isn't it?
Totally. Because, I mean, we know he's paying attention, right? We know he wants to see results and he wants to see them quickly. That to me, is an interesting subplot in that. Does it force Bill Belichick off his spot at all, right? He believes this new offense is the way for this team to operate moving forward. And again, when we say new offense, I think it really is just a very new emphasis, but that's what Mac Jones called it. You've been saying it all week, Tom. He called it a new offense. It's really what it is. Does it force Bill, Tom, to get away from it as opposed to where maybe in years past they would try something and Bill and Josh McDaniels would tell us, through 2 weeks, okay, we've got to excise some stuff here because we know now we're not very good at it. Can they wait that long? Or do they have to use these joint practices? Do they have to find out maybe in the first set of joint practices that they can or can't do this year and then get into whatever it is they're going to do in the second set of joint practices with the Raiders? Does it have to happen that soon? Can they get into the regular season? Because Robert Kraft there's some urgency here. He wants a playoff win, right? He wants, so you got to get into the playoffs to get a playoff win. I don't know if you have a ton of time to experiment in his eyes through the first month of the season the way they have before. So it's all, I think all of this stuff is relevant, makes it fascinating.
What do you expect to see for the remainder of this week and then into next week? Next week is not the first. I should know this off the top of my head. August 9th will be the first preseason game. Wait, is next Thursday the first preseason game?
Yeah. It's August 11th.
Mom.
August 11th against the Giants. So they usually have them for the preseason finale. They've got them first.
Sorry.
So they got the Giants first. And so next week I would anticipate, Tom, we're going to see
they got to do some red zone.
The work, they've got to get ratcheted up.
They got to do some goal line.
They've got to do goal line. They've got to tackle. They haven't done this stuff yet. And I'm just wondering whether we're going to see it. They got to condition, this week really has not been a conditioning week. So I would expect we get a lot more of all that stuff next week.
So Friday will be a night practice. Saturday, almost certainly off. I don't think we have the schedule yet, but they've been on all week. Since Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they are by rule most likely about to take Saturday off, and then they'll be back at it again on Sunday. Interesting week, very interesting week, very interesting to observe. And again, I wrote this yesterday. The apocalyptic tenor of everything that we're saying down here has to be measured against. Eventually, the Patriots are going to be able to execute vast swaths, if not the entirety of what they're trying to install. I guarantee you, they don't have worse coaches than the Atlanta Falcons and Matt Schaub and whoever else. They'll figure it out. It's just how long the process takes and whether or not they have the specific humans in place to do it along places like the offensive line. Because as Phil has pointed out, that's where protection has been the most lacking. But we'll flip the page next week and keep our eyes on it. Eventually they'll figure it out, but they better shift it into the shift. Happier times, folks. Jake Bailey and I had a great conversation today. Quick Slants will be starting up pretty soon, so make sure you keep your eyes peeled for this, and you're going to see plenty of irrelevant questions in Quick Slants. Phil, great job. Next Pat's Pod was out, and he talked to Trey Nixon, who was pretty good guest. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the great Jake Bailey with us today. How you doing, my guy?
Great. How are you doing?
Tremendous. Do you see my attire?
It's pretty sweet. I love it. I need to get me one.
Our guy DJ Bean had this made for me because in 2020, pandemic year, we would watch the games in the green room. And the offense at times would stagger. And I would start to say when the offense staggered on first and second down, just get the ball to Jake Bailey. And you had an all-pro season, so.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it was. I'm just been having fun each year. Each and every year, it's been fun being the punter for this team.
Was there any one thing, because you got a contract extension, and we should congratulate you immediately
Appreciate
on that. Was there any one thing you had your eye on, just a completely frivolous purchase that you wanted to make, that you're going to make?
After the season, I'm going to need to get a watch for my kicker and snapper, because that's what he did for us last year. So I need to return the favor this coming year.
For Joe?
Joe and Nick, yeah. So we'll see. I don't have one picked out, but will be one coming soon, I think.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, and when folks hear this on the pod or see this, they can share with us. Those are supposed to be a good investment too, watches.
Yeah, I think so. Nick knows more about it than I do. You got to ask him.
See what happens when you hit your 30s?
Exactly. I still got 5 more years to go.
How has this camp been? I mean, it's just a nonstop litany of smoking hot days. Do you like it like that?
Yeah, I'm happy we're preparing for each and every weather. I'm sure September 11th is going to be a little hot, so I'm hoping this prepares us for whatever we have coming across this season.
As a longtime Patriots scribe, whenever I hear each and every, I say, okay, he's just logged into Patriot Speak. So we're going to get away from all football talk. I'm just going out there each and every day.
Oh, man.
For each and every play.
Yeah.
So let's just have a little fun. This is called Irrelevant Questions. I've been doing this for a long time. I think you're going to like it. Would you ever drink hot coffee on a hot day?
Oh, yeah. I prefer cold brew, though.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Dunks?
Starbucks. I'm from Southern California, sorry.
That makes sense.
Yeah, we don't have much Dunkin' there.
Have you been able to adjust to the New England lifestyle, and how much does it contrast from Southern California? What's the one thing that's way different about people and the place?
It's a good question. So I live up in the city, which I love. I get the city environment, and then when I'm back in San Diego, it's back home, kind of beachy feel. So 2 different things, and I love each aspect of both. It's fun.
Each and every aspect?
Yeah. Each and every.
Can't have it.
Got the earpiece. Yeah, the mouthpiece for you guys. Yeah.
What's the best golf shot that you've ever hit?
Oh.
Because I know you played golf. I didn't catch up to you. We were at the Joe Andrewsy tournament. I wanted to catch up to you. Didn't have a chance to, but I know you play.
Didn't have many good shots on that tournament. That was very bad. 2 off seasons ago, I was a lot better than what I've been playing recently. I haven't been practicing as much recently.
Fair.
A lot more football practice. One of my favorite golf shots is actually at Granite Links, just right up the 93. And it's the Granite 9, the first hole. You kind of put your first shot in the fairway, and then you have like 240 downhill over 2 ravines that you got to hit the green on. 240, and I've hit that a few times, and that's always fun.
See, that's a bomb.
Yeah.
And you overswing and you fan it out to the right, and the next thing you know, the poop is hitting the fan on you. Let's go rapid fire. Steak or fish?
Steak.
Beach or lake?
Beach.
That meant ocean or lake. Pontoon boat, motorboat?
Motorboat.
Favorite beach game?
Ooh, spike ball. You ever played?
Spiky ball, yeah. My kids are all about your age, so they have it out back. All right, let's go simple rudimentary ice cream flavor.
Vanilla.
Each and every day.
I'm a punter. We got to keep it simple.
3 last questions. They're going to be favorites. Favorite place that you visited in the New England region where you had a really nice time? And you can take your time with this because we've got a few of them, or maybe you haven't gotten out and explored.
Finals games of the Celtics Warriors. When I was able to go to those games, that unreal environment. I've never been to a championship environment. I've only been out in New England for a few years, and I can see what this city's about.
Yeah, people lose their absolute minds.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So being a California guy, were you rooting for the Warriors? Watch this.
No, not at all. I'm a Boston sports guy now, through and through.
It's kind of addictive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you get the mentality of the Boston sports fan? I'm not saying have you adopted it, but do you get it where it's always desperate and urgent and kind of a little bit apocalyptic that the poop's about to hit the fan on us?
I'll never do that. I won't be that fan. I can't.
That's the California mentality.
Yeah.
A few more years of shit weather and you'll get there right with us. Okay, so that was what was your favorite vacation spot or place that you visited as opposed to experience?
I went to Cabo with my family 2 off seasons ago. That was awesome. Been to London, and that's been really fun. Just beach environments are always fun for me too. Yeah. You can't really beat San Diego, in my opinion.
You really can't.
I'm
I
on
mean,
vacation when I go there.
yeah, you can't. Okay, final one. Favorite sport, not alternative, favorite sport that is not football.
AFL, Australian. Yeah, it's the best.
Well,
That's a Darren Bennett. He kind of taught me how to punt. He 10-year career in that.
he taught you how to punt.
Kind of, yeah.
He was an
In
absolute
San Diego.
gorilla.
Oh yeah, yeah. He was one of my main coaches way back in the day, and yeah, 10-year career in both sports.
Was he a barefoot punter?
No, I don't think so.
No, he definitely was.
should know.
Could you do me one solid?
Yeah.
Can you put your helmet down? Can you face up to my guy Adam Hart, and could you just give me a quick Australian rules football touchdown sign?
Touchdown sign.
Yeah, the double guns. You know what it is.
I actually don't. Yeah, you give me it.
Goes through, and they go.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't know that?
There you go.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it.